The evil stepmother locked him outside in the rain. No guilt, no second thought. Just a locked gate and a little boy on the other side of it. He stood there in the cold, knocking, crying, begging for someone to open the door. The lights were on inside the house. People were home. Nobody came. The rain got harder. His uniform was soaked through. His knees were shaking. His voice was getting weaker. And still, that gate did not move. Then he stopped knocking. Not because help came. Because his body had nothing left. She saw him from far away. A small shape in the rain, pressed against iron bars. She started walking faster. Then running. She was almost there. And just before she reached him, he fell. She was a Nigerian schoolteacher. She had no connection to his family. No reason to be involved in any of this. But she caught him. And what happened after that, nobody in that house was prepared for. If this story already has you feeling something, you're not alone. Subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss what comes next. Now, let's get into it. Lagos doesn't make soft people. Tiwa Adeyemi grew up in old Lagos, real Lagos. Small houses packed close together. Children playing in the street until the generator came on. The smell of pepper soup from one window mixing with bus exhaust from the main road. Her mother was up before sunrise every day, ironing other people's clothes. Pressing school uniforms for children whose parents could afford to pay someone else to do it. By the time little Tiwa was awake, her mother had already been working for 2 hours. Tiwa watched that her whole life, and she made a promise to herself. The sacrifice would mean something. By 26, she was an English teacher, and she was good. Not just at grammar and essays, she was good at seeing. She noticed the children who were quiet for the wrong reasons. The ones with eyes that tracked every exit. The ones who flinched at sudden sounds. The ones who had been taught, somewhere along the way, that being invisible was safer than being seen. Once Tiwa's radar locked on a child like that, she didn't let go. Then the email arrived. Hanbuk International Academy. Seoul, South Korea, full package, free accommodation, airport pickup. A salary 3 times what she was earning. She read it 3 times, then called her mother. Mama, South Korea. They're offering me South Korea. Her mother went quiet. Long enough that Tiwa thought the line had dropped. Then her mother said, God didn't carry you this far, just to stop you at the water. Go. Tiwa packed 2 suitcases, said goodbye to her street and her noise and her people, and got on the plane. She had no idea what was waiting for her on the other side. On this other side of the world, in a city that moved like clockwork and feared very little, there was a man whose name was spoken carefully. Hwang Ji-won, 44 years old, always in a charcoal suit, clean-shaven. Never raised his voice because he never needed to. On paper, he was a real estate developer. On the streets of Seoul, everyone knew the truth. He ran the largest underground syndicate in the city. Businesses paid him to stay safe. Politicians kept his number under fake names. Police investigations that got too close had a habit of running out of evidence. He was not a man you crossed. But underneath all of that, he had once loved someone completely. Her name was Song Yoo-na. She was the only person who had ever made him laugh. Really laugh, not the polished smile he showed the world. She saw straight through the suit and the power and the danger, down to whoever was actually living underneath. He married her at 32. Their son Bong-soo was born the following year. When Ji-won held that baby for the first time, that quiet, wide-eyed baby, looking at the world like he was already trying to figure it out, he understood something he had never felt before. He was capable of protecting something he loved. Then Yuna got sick. A headache that didn't go away. Dizziness that got worse. A hospital visit that started routine and ended with words like cerebral hemorrhage and we're sorry. She was gone in 3 weeks. Bong-soo was 5 years old. Ji-won stood at her grave on a cold morning and didn't speak. Didn't cry. Not in front of anyone. He just stood there for a long time. And when he walked back to the car, everyone who saw his face said the same thing afterward. Something in him had closed. Like a door shut from the inside with no handle on the outside. He went back to work. He went back to his empire. And he raised Bong-soo the only way he knew how. From a distance. Through structure. Through discipline. Through things he could control. Because love felt like something that could be taken from him. And he'd already lost everything he was willing to lose. 1 year after Yuna died, Ji-won's most senior advisor brought him a proposal. They were in his office late at night. The city spread out through the floor-to-ceiling window, like a game board waiting to be played. The advisor placed a single folder on the desk. The director of Yonsei Meridian Hospital, Choi Byung-han. His daughter is unmarried. His hospital handles the medical needs of half the elite in Seoul. Politicians. Judges. Senior police. When those people need something handled quietly. A record sealed, a condition kept private. They go to Choi Byung-hun. He paused. A connection to his family would give you walls that money alone cannot build. Ji-won turned toward the window. He understood exactly what was being said. Medical cover for his operations. Political insulation through the hospital's network. The kind of social legitimacy that opened doors no amount of power could force. He sat with it for 3 days. Then he made his decision. The director's daughter was named Choi Soo-yeon. Beautiful, precise. The kind of woman who walked into a room and made people straighten without knowing why. She had her father's eyes, calculating, patient, always 3 steps ahead of the moment. She looked at Ji-won across the dinner table and saw power, wealth, and a ladder. He looked at her and saw access and walls. They were married 6 months later. It was the most expensive wedding in their social circle that year. And it was, underneath all that silk and champagne, a cage being built around a boy who had already lost his mother. Soo-yeon had not planned to hate him. But the moment she understood what Bong-soo represented, heir, firstborn, the one who would inherit everything Ji-won had built, hatred arrived like a cold system settling over a city. Quiet, total, complete. She did the math. Her own son, Bong-jae, born a year into the marriage, a round, laughing baby she loved fiercely, would always be second in this house as long as Bong-soo existed. So she began. Not loudly, not where anyone could see. She was her father's daughter. She had watched a powerful man operate in surgical silence for 30 years. She knew exactly how it was done. In front of Ji-won, she was warmth itself. She straightened Bong-soo's collar before school. She packed his snacks. She smiled at him, with the practiced precision of a woman who always knew where the cameras were. But Ji-won traveled. A man running a syndicate is never fully home. And those absences, the house became a different place entirely. She told the housekeeper Bong-soo had already eaten, when he hadn't. So the housekeeper prepared 1 portion less, and the boy sat at the table with half a meal, alone, while Soo-yeon fed Bong-jae in the next room with the door pulled shut. She turned the heating off in his bedroom and told him when he came to complain that he was old enough to stop being soft. She had his room moved to the far end of the 2nd floor, away from the family rooms. She told Ji-won the boy needed space, independence. Ji-won thought it was reasonable. He didn't know the room had the weakest heating in the house. He didn't know the door could be locked from the outside. And then there were the words. Late, at night, when the house was quiet, she would come to his doorway. Her voice never rose. It stayed low and almost gentle, and that made it worse somehow, the gentleness of it. Your mother was weak, she would say. That's why she got sick. You have her weakness. I can see it in you. Your father loves you because you look like her, but one day he'll see what I see. Bong-soo was 6 years old the first time she said that. By 7, he'd stopped raising his hand in class. By 7, he'd stopped asking for things. He'd learned to be small, to take up as little space as possible. To watch every room he entered for the safest place to sit. He carried his school bag on his lap, even in class, both arms around it, like he was always ready to run. His eyes always found the door first. That was her work, all of it. Soo-yeon had originally placed Bong-soo in an elite all-boys boarding academy on the far side of Seoul. Long hours. Strict structure. Far enough away that she barely had to think about him. She'd sold it to Ji-won perfectly. He needs discipline, strong male influence. Boys like him thrive in that kind of environment. Ji-won agreed. But 5 months in, Bong-soo came home with a bruise on his wrist the size of a hand. A 14-year-old at the school had decided that cornering the Mafia boss's quiet kid was a way to prove something to his friends. Ji-won saw the bruise at dinner. He asked very quietly how it happened. Bong-soo stared at his food and said nothing. Ji-won put down his chopsticks, excused himself, walked out of the room. That night, 2 of his men paid a visit to the family of the 14-year-old. Nobody was hurt. But things were said very quietly, very clearly. And the family understood that their son had made an error he would not be repeating. The next morning, Ji-won told his assistant, pull him out. International curriculum. English focus. Small. Close to home. Somewhere calm. Soo-yeon heard this from across the room. She didn't protest. She offered to help. She brought Ji-won her tablet that evening with a list of schools. One circled at the top. Hanbuk International Academy. Small class sizes. Progressive. Strong English program. 12 minutes from here. Ji-won looked at it for 30 seconds. Nodded. Enroll him. She smiled like a woman doing her husband a favor. But she had confirmed 3 things about that school before she ever showed it to him. No cameras in the primary corridors. Homeroom teachers who rotated every semester. No one staying long enough to build a real relationship with a child. Small enough that a quiet, withdrawn boy would simply be described as thoughtful and then forgotten. She had chosen it for exactly those reasons. What she didn't know, couldn't have known, was that 3 days before Bongsu's enrollment was processed, a Nigerian woman had just landed at Incheon Airport with 2 suitcases, and eyes that found the quiet ones. The car that picked Tiwa up from the airport was black and clean and silent. Seoul arrived through the window like a film she'd seen trailers for, but never fully watched. The vertical scale of it, buildings stacking themselves against a gray morning sky. A wide river cutting silver beneath a bridge. Neon signs still burning in daylight. She pressed her face to the glass and breathed it in. Her apartment was on the 2nd floor of a faculty housing complex 2 blocks from a main road. Clean floors. A kitchen with a rice cooker already sitting on the counter, like someone had been thoughtful. She stood in the living room and listened. Silence. Complete, uninterrupted silence. In Lagos, even at 3 in the morning there was something. A generator, a dog, a neighbor's gate. Here, nothing. Just the distant city, polite and far away. She decided she liked it. She called her mother. They talked for 40 minutes. About small things, because the big ones were too large to say directly. She had 3 days before her first class. The 2nd day, she walked her neighborhood. Found the mart, the bus stop, the Jajangmyeon place with pictures on the menu, the route to the school. On her way back, she passed a walled compound 2 blocks north. Black gate, security camera above the entrance. A car outside so clean, it looked like it had been detailed that morning. And on the front step, alone, in a school uniform on a weekend, a small boy, both hands flat on his knees, staring at nothing. The way people stare when they're used to having nothing interesting to look at. Tiwa slowed. The boy didn't look up. She kept walking. But she looked back once over her shoulder. He was still there, still staring, still alone. She told herself it was nothing, but the radar in her chest had already ticked. Classroom 1B. First day. 22 students in navy uniforms looking at her like she'd arrived from another planet, which in a way she had. She wrote her name on the board, Tewa, turned around and smiled. Good morning. I'm from Nigeria. That's in West Africa. Some of you have never met someone from Nigeria. That's okay. I've never taught in Korea. So we're both starting something new. That means we're equal. We're in this together. 22 faces thawed one by one, except one. 3rd row, last seat. As far right as the arrangement allowed. The boy had his school bag on his lap, both arms around it. Not on the hook beside his desk, not on the floor. On his lap. His eyes weren't on her, they were on the door. She noted it, said nothing. Let the lesson run. Over the next 2 weeks, she learned his name. She learned that he completed every assignment correctly, which meant he was smart and paying attention, even when he looked like he was paying attention to nothing. She learned he never raised his hand even when she was certain he knew the answer. She learned that at lunch he carried his tray to the corner of the canteen and ate facing the wall. And she noticed that 2 boys in the class had started calling him Ghost Boy. They said it like it was funny. He never reacted. He just became more still. She's let it go for 3 days. On the 4th day, she stopped the class. In this classroom, she said, setting down her book, we do not give people nicknames they haven't agreed to. It isn't clever, it isn't funny, it's unkind. And in my class, unkindness is the one thing I won't accept. She looked directly at the 2 boys. If I hear it again, you'll each write me a 2-page essay in English. No spelling errors. On why unkindness is a form of cowardice. Are we clear? 22 children nodded with the speed of people who were extremely clear. She didn't look at Bongsu when she said it. She didn't want to embarrass him, but from the edge of her sight she saw something change in his face. Not a smile. Not quite. But something, like a fist unclenching. Like a small piece of the weight on him had been lifted and held by someone else. Just for a moment, she opened her book again and kept teaching. But she wrote in her small desk notebook that evening. Bag on his lap every day, eyes on the door, eats alone. Never raises his hand. Flinches at raised voices that have nothing to do with him. Someone has taught this child that being visible is dangerous. Find out who. Thursday afternoon. Last class of the day. Rain tapping against the window since lunch. They were reading a story about a boy who finds a bird with a broken wing on the side of the road. He picks it up, carries it home, builds it a small box lined with cloth, feeds it with his fingers, stays up worrying, the wing heals. The boy carries the box outside and opens the top. The bird looks at him and flies away. Tiwa closed the book. Tell me, what do you think the boy was feeling at the end? Hands everywhere. Sad because the bird left, happy because he saved it, both at the same time. She moved through the answers, building on each one. Then she turned to the back corner, Bong-soo. The room went quiet. 21 heads turned. He stared at the book on his desk. Tiwa walked toward him, not fast. The way you move towards something you don't want to startle. When she reached him, she crouched all the way down beside his desk. Below eye level, not above it, because she'd learned years ago that standing over a child to have an important conversation is the fastest way to make them shut down completely. Take your time, she said quietly, just for him. There's no wrong answer here, you know that by now. Silence. She waited. Then, barely above the sound of the rain, scared. Scared, she repeated, gently. Of what? A long pause. That even if he fixed the wing, the bird would still leave. The other children didn't know what to do with that. It was too large for them. They were 7 and 8, and mostly thinking about what was on television when they got home. But Tiwa felt it land in her chest like something with weight. This wasn't an answer about a bird. She stayed crouched beside his desk. She didn't look at the rest of the class. Do you know what I think? She said. I think that boy isn't sad. I think he's brave. Because when he picked that bird up, he already knew it might leave one day. He knew he couldn't keep it, and he chose to care for it anyway. To hold it anyway, she paused. That kind of caring. When you know it might hurt and you do it anyway, that's not weakness. That's the strongest thing a person can be. She stood, went back to the front of the class. Behind her, she heard a small sound, a bag being lifted off a lap and placed on a hook beside a desk. She kept her face forward. But she was smiling. She saw him again on a Saturday 2 blocks from her apartment. She was coming back from the mart when she saw the gate of the compound ahead, the black car outside, the camera blinking slowly above the entrance, and Bong-soo's on the front step, same position, same uniform on a weekend. But this time someone had come to the doorway, a woman, tall, elegant, pale gray silk robe, hair perfectly done even on a Saturday morning. She stepped toward Bong-soo and crouched in front of him, both hands reaching for his collar, straightening it, smoothing it the way you do when you're taking care of someone. Tiwa stopped walking. From 50 meters away, she watched. The woman's hands were doing the right things. Her face was arranged in something that looked like warmth. But Tiwa had been teaching for 6 years. She knew the difference, the deep, cellular difference, between touching a child because you love them and touching a child because the scene needs to look right. The woman's eyes were somewhere else entirely. Not on Bong-soo, not really. She was performing, and she was very good at it. Tiwa kept walking. She didn't stop. She didn't want to be seen staring, but her jaw was tight all the way home. She wrote one line in her notebook that night. The woman at the gate doesn't see him. She's managing him. October arrived and the rain came with it. The kind of Seoul autumn rain that falls sideways and doesn't apologize for it. Cold, heavy. The kind that soaks through a jacket in 30 seconds and makes most people stay inside after dark. Tiwa had run out of rice. She'd been cooking tomato stew on the stove, the seasoning cubes her cousin had sent from Lagos, because the ones here weren't quite right, and reached for the bag of rice to find it empty. She stood in the kitchen for 30 seconds. Then she pulled on her yellow raincoat, grabbed her bags, and stepped out into it. The mart was 8 minutes away. She moved fast, head down, rain hitting the hood of her coat. She got what she needed. Rice, tomatoes, a few other things, paid, and was back outside in 12 minutes. On the way home, she turned onto the street that ran past the north compound. She was moving with her head down, groceries against her chest, thinking about the stew waiting on the stove. Something made her look up. She didn't know what. Some instinct. The radar she'd carried her whole teaching life suddenly pulling at her chest. She looked up, and she stopped. He was there, pressed flat against the iron gate, both fists raised, knocking. His school uniform was soaked through completely. Not just wet, the kind of soaked that takes time. It had taken time. His lips were moving, but the rain swallowed every sound. The lights in the house were on. Nobody was coming. Something moved through Tiwa's chest, cold and then hot. The particular heat that comes when you've been watching something build for weeks. The bag on the lap, the eyes on the door, the woman performing warmth with empty eyes. And you finally see where it was always going. She started walking faster. He knocked again, then again. Then his fists dropped and his arms fell to his sides and he pressed his forehead against the iron bars. He'd stopped hoping for an answer. That was the thing that made her run. She moved fast. Bag swinging, feet splashing through puddles she didn't bother avoiding. The cold rain hitting her full in the face now because her head was up and she wasn't slowing down for anything. She was 20 meters away when it happened. His legs buckled. His knees bent inward and one hand shot out and grabbed the gate bar. And his whole body swayed like a candle in a draft. His grip on the bar was the only thing keeping him upright. His fingers were white around the iron. His eyes were half closed. He was going down. Tiwa ran harder. She covered the last 20 meters in seconds. She reached him just as his grip gave out. Both arms going around him, taking his weight against her body, the grocery bags still in one hand because she didn't let go of anything. He was small and cold in a way that wasn't right, not wet cold, bone cold. The kind of cold that means the body has been fighting for a long time and is starting to lose. She pressed her palm to his face. His was the same temperature as the iron gate. Bong-su, she kept her voice steady. Open your eyes. A pause, too long. Then his eyes opened, slow and heavy. He found her face, and what she saw there was not fear, not confusion, not surprise. It was recognition. And underneath it, the most heartbreaking thing she had ever seen on a child's face. Relief. The relief of someone who had been waiting a very long time for rescue, and had almost stopped believing it would come. Miss Tiwa, his voice was almost nothing. Don't talk. I have you. She pulled her raincoat off with one hand and wrapped it around him. The rain hit her shoulders immediately. She didn't care, the clinic. 2 streets over. She'd passed it every morning on her walks, small place. But the light above the door was on, and that light was a promise. She shifted his weight against her side and moved. 2 streets. She counted them. The woman at the clinic reception was on her feet before Tiwa reached the counter. He's been outside in the rain for at least 40 minutes, Tiwa said. He's too cold. His skin. She stopped. She didn't have a number. She had the feel of his face against her hand, and that was enough. The doctor appeared fast, young, efficient. The kind of doctor who moves first and asks questions while moving. How long outside? 40 minutes, maybe more. He was locked out of his house. A brief pause in the walking. Then she kept moving. Relationship to the child? Tiwa thought for half a second about the woman in the pale gray robe, the empty eyes, the performance. His teacher, she said. I'm his English teacher. They took him to a warm room. IV drip, warming blanket, a monitor on his finger. The doctor worked with a focus that Tiwa found steadying. She was asked to wait in the corridor. She sat down on a plastic chair and put the grocery bags on the floor and pressed both hands flat against her knees. She was soaked through. Her blouse was stuck to her back. Her braids were dripping. And she was shaking, not from cold, though she was cold. From the kind of anger that arrives when a child has been failed by the people responsible for keeping him safe. And you have just seen the proof of it lying cold in your arms. She made 2 things happen from that corridor. First, she called the school's emergency line and got Ji-won's contact number from the enrollment records. Medical emergency, they were required to share it. Second, she sent an email to the school administration. Time, location, condition of the child when found, which clinic, which doctor, facts only, no accusations. Just a clear, time-stamped record that would exist in writing before morning. She'd been a teacher long enough to know that facts written down early are more powerful than accusations made later. Then she put her phone on her knee and waited. 43 minutes later, the doctor came out. He's stable. Temperature is returning. He's going to be fine. A pause. He's asking for you. The room was warm. Antiseptic and clean and small. Bong-su was sitting up on the bed, the warming blanket pulled close around his chin, the IV line in his left arm, color coming slowly back into his face. The way heat returns reluctantly, like it had to be convinced. He looked smaller here than he did in class. In his uniform, with his careful stillness, he could sometimes seem older than he was. But in this bed, with the blanket bunched around him and his hair still damp, he just looked like what he was, a 7-year-old boy, who had been failed by the people who were supposed to keep him safe. Tiwa sat in the chair beside his bed. She didn't rush. She knew better than to rush. You don't lead with talking when a child is in a fragile place. You lead with presence. You sit still. You let them know you're not going anywhere. You wait for them to decide when they're ready. The monitor beeped softly. Rain ran down the window. Then Bong-su spoke. She doesn't like me. No preamble. No build-up. No confusion about who he was talking about. Just the flat, bare truth of a child who had been carrying something alone for 2 years and had finally, in the warmth and the safety of someone who had run to him in the rain, found the strength to set it down. Tiwa looked at him. Everything in her wanted to say, that's not true. You're loved. You're safe. Everything in her wanted to comfort him the way adults comfort children. By making the bad thing smaller, wrapping words around it until it seems like less than it is. But she'd promised herself long ago she would never lie to a child about something they already knew. I know, she said. He looked at her, something shifted in his eyes. He nodded slowly. The nod of someone who needed someone else to confirm what they already knew was real. But, Tiwa said, leaning forward, elbows on her knees, holding his eyes, I like you, and I need you to hear me. One person who genuinely sees you, one person who actually sees you, is worth more than 10 people who don't. He looked at her for a long time, testing it, weighing it, checking it against everything he already knew. Then he said very quietly, Yes, she said. You didn't have to. She leaned forward a little more. Look at me, she said. He did. I did have to. Because you're in my class. You're my student. That means you're mine to look after, inside the classroom and outside it. That's not a rule someone gave me. That's just who I am. He looked at her for a long moment, the weighing look, the testing look. And then, carefully, slowly, like a boy testing whether something fragile would hold, he leaned his head sideways against her arm, just placed it there. Gently, like a question, she didn't move. She didn't make it into something. She just sat still with this small boy's head against her arm and the rain against the window and let the moment be exactly what it was. A child who had finally, after 2 years of learning that the people around him were not safe, found one person who was. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, something settled between them that would not be undone by morning, or by the months ahead, or by the complicated world that was already moving toward both of them. 3 blocks away, in the large house with the warm lights and the tall iron gate, Choi Soo-yeon sat at her vanity and applied night cream with careful circular motions. Bong Jae was asleep. The housekeeper had cleaned up. The house was quiet, exactly as she liked it. She had turned off the intercom to the front gate at 6 o'clock that evening. She had told the housekeeper that Bong Soo was spending the night at a school friend's house. Said it casually. The way you say things you've rehearsed until they sound unrehearsed. And the housekeeper had cleared his dinner plate away without a second thought. Soo-yeon had then run a bath, done her nails, watched 2 episodes of her drama. She did not check the front gate camera. She did not wonder where he was. She looked at herself in the mirror, smooth, composed, exactly as she always was. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Jiwon, she answered with a warm voice. Jiwon, are you on your way? Come to the front of the house, he said. I'll be there in 7 minutes. The warmth dropped out of her voice before she could stop it. Something in his tone. Flat and even and emptied of everything. The way a man sounds when he has already made a decision and is simply moving toward it. Is everything. 7 minutes, he said. The line went dead. Here is something about Hwang Ji-won that very few people knew. 2 years ago, quietly, without telling anyone in his household, he had set up a silent alert on every medical facility within 5 kilometers of his compound. A notification to his personal phone anytime a member of his family was admitted or registered. He'd done it because he was a man who had lost his wife without warning, who had been somewhere else when she collapsed, who had gotten a phone call instead of being there. He had promised himself he'd never be the last to know again. That evening, he was in the back seat of his car, leaving a private dinner when his phone buzzed. He looked down. Hwang Bong-soo, admitted, hypothermia, the clinic's name, the street, the time, 2014. The car kept moving. The city lights slid past the window. His dinner companion was still talking. Jiwon's face didn't change. He had a controlled face. Years of it. A face that sat across from dangerous men without giving anything away. A face that had delivered decisions that changed lives without showing anything in the telling. But something happened behind his eyes. Something that wasn't calm, wasn't controlled. Something older, from a part of him that had stood at a grave in the cold and decided to stop feeling things. Stop the car, he said. His companion looked at him. Jiwon, we haven't finished. The dinner is finished. His companion got out. Jiwon's driver turned around. Where to? Jiwon read out the clinic address. And in the silence of the car, as it moved through the rain, he sat with one question. The same question, over and over. How had his son ended up alone in the rain? 3 blocks from their house. Cold enough to need a hospital. The question sat in his chest like something with teeth. He was going to get the answer tonight. The clinic door opened at 9:47. Tiwa heard the footsteps from the room, fast, purposeful. The walk of a man who knows where he's going and doesn't slow down for anything. The doorway filled. He was tall, dark suit. A face that was, she'd try to find the right word later, controlled. Like a surface covering something very deep and very still. His eyes moved to his son first. He looked at Bong-soo for 3 full seconds, the rise and fall of the warming blanket, the IV line, the color returning to his face. Ji-won's jaw tightened, then released. Then he looked at her. She met his eyes. She'd sat across from powerful parents in difficult conversations more times than she could count. She'd learned to hold her ground in those moments. Children needed their teachers to hold their ground. She held it now. "You're the one who brought him here," he said. "Yes, you're his teacher." English, classroom 1B. He looked at her for a moment, then back at his son. Bong-soo had woken at the sound of the voice. He was looking at his father. Tiwa watched his face carefully, watched to see what expression a boy makes when he sees his father after a night like this one. It wasn't fear. It wasn't the bracing stillness he showed around Su-yan. It was something more complicated. A child who loved his father and wasn't sure how much his father knew, or whether what had happened tonight would be managed and explained away by morning. Ji-won crossed the room in 3 steps. He crouched at the bedside, all the way down, the way men who command rooms only crouch when something matters more than everything else, and put his hand on his son's face. "Bong-soo-ya." His voice had changed, lower. Something had come out of it that wasn't usually there. Bong-soo looked at his father. "Who locked the gate?" Ji-won asked. Silence. The boy looked at his father for a long, long moment. The weighing look, the testing look, the look of a child who has learned that telling the truth at home isn't always a safe thing to do. Then he said, barely above a whisper, "She said I was going to a friend's house, but I wasn't. And when I came home, the gate was locked." Ji-won's hand on his son's face didn't move. His expression didn't change. But the room changed, the way air changes before a storm. Not visible, not loud. You feel it against your skin. You feel it before you can name it. Tiwa felt it. "Are you warm enough?" Ji-won asked his son. "Yes. Does anything hurt?" "No. Good." He pressed his forehead briefly against Bong-soo's forehead, just for a moment, just one moment, so private and so human that Tiwa looked away. When she looked back, Ji-won had straightened and turned to face her. "Your name," he said. "Tiwa Adeyemi. English teacher, Hanbuk International Academy." He nodded once. "You carried him here." "Yes. In the rain." "Yes." He looked at her the way a man looks at something that doesn't fit any category he already has. Not assessing a threat, something else entirely. "He was going to fall," she said simply, because it was true and it needed to be said. "I know," he said. And then thank you. Not extravagantly. Not with performance. Just 2 words in a tone that meant, "I understand exactly what you did, and it is worth more than you know." He turned back to his son. Tiwa picked up her bags, but she stopped in the doorway. There was something she needed to say. She'd been deciding whether it was her place. She'd decided it was. "Mr. Huang," he turned. "He's one of the most remarkable children I've ever taught," she said. "Intelligent. Thoughtful in a way most adults aren't. And he's been carrying something very heavy for a long time." She held his eyes. "He needs someone to notice. Someone inside that house." A long pause, then Ji-won said, "I know." Just that, 2 words, with a weight in them that told her he was no longer talking about tonight. She left. She walked home through the rain with her grocery bags and no raincoat, soaked through and cold. And she felt underneath all of it something that was not quite peace but was close to it. This was what she'd been built for. Not a lesson plan, not a curriculum. A child who needed someone to come in the rain. She had come. 3 blocks away, Choi Soo-yeon stood in the entrance hall of the house and waited. She had chosen a softer robe, something that read as, "I have been at home all evening, innocent, unaware." She had rehearsed what she would say. A miscommunication with the housekeeper. She had thought he was at a friend's house. She was horrified. She was going to find out who was responsible. She was her father's daughter. She had been managing situations like this her whole life. She heard the car. She heard the gate open. Ji-won walked through the front door, and the rain came in with him for a second before the door closed. He stopped in the entrance. He looked at her. She opened her mouth to begin. "Don't," he said. 1 word, quiet. The way he said everything, Soo-yeon went still. She had miscalculated something. She could feel it. In the particular quality of that silence. In the stillness of his face. The stillness she had always mistaken for calm. It was not calm. He reached into his jacket and placed his phone on the side table between them. Screen facing up. She looked down at it. On the screen was a photograph, time-stamped. A street security camera. 2 blocks from their gate. A small boy in a soaked school uniform. Standing alone in the rain. The timestamp, 1931. More than an hour before she had turned the television off. Soo-yeon looked at the photograph. She looked up at Ji-won. She had prepared for many things. She had not prepared for a photograph. "I've been watching," Ji-won said quietly. I've been watching for a while now. He picked the phone up. Tonight just told me what I was looking at. Su-yan said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The walls she had spent 2 years building. The performance, the precision, the careful architecture of a woman doing everything right, crumbled in the light of a single time-stamped photograph. Her father's hospital, her father's connections, her carefully constructed position in this house. None of it had accounted for one thing: a Nigerian schoolteacher who ran out in the rain, and a father with an alert on every clinic within 5 kilometers. Ji-won walked past her toward the stairs. He stopped on the 3rd step and turned back. In the morning, he said, "Someone from my legal team will come to the house." His voice was even, factual, the voice of a man closing a chapter. "You'll want to call your father tonight." He went upstairs. The house, warm, golden, full of the things her ambition had built, went very, very quiet. And in a clinic 2 streets away, a small boy with a warming blanket around his shoulders finally slept without watching the door. Want to know what happened next? Part 2 is available on Gumroad, link in the description. If this story hit you somewhere real, subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell, because Part 2 is coming. And in Part 2, Ji-won starts asking questions about the teacher who carried his son through the rain. A woman with no connection to his world, no reason to be involved. He wants to know who she is. And when a man like Hwang Ji-won starts paying attention to someone, everything changes. Subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens next.